on this episode, we're excited to welcome Nicole, a passionate third grade teacher from New York. Nicole's journey began at SUNY New Paltz, where she earned her bachelor's degree in early childhood and childhood education spanning birth to grade 6. She also holds a master's degree in literacy. Nicole brings with her a wealth of experience, having worked with students in grades kindergarten to 4th grade over the last 4 years. Nicole, welcome. Right now in this space, it's difficult to be a teacher.
I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I always knew, and here I am. I would stress about making the perfect lesson or the perfect plan. And I've learned that things are not always going to be perfect.
Do you have a rough estimate of how much you usually spend?
I don't have somewhere to go in my school to get a box of tissues.
Right.
I have to buy them because we don't have that, you know?
It's estimated that 35% of all students have moderate, high, or severe test anxiety.
No, these tests are just a small portion of what they truly are. Keep a good work-life balance because you don't want to lose yourself in it.
The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. Here are your hosts, Anayet Chowdhury and Vlad Suleiman.
Nicole, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. I'd love to start first by learning just a little bit more about you, Nicole. Did you always want to be a teacher at a young age, or when did you know and decide you wanted to pursue teaching at an elementary school?
I have always known. I've always loved being around kids. Even when I was a kid, I would like to be around younger kids. And I had an awesome teacher in first grade. She was like the vision of a perfect teacher. And I always knew that I wanted to be exactly like her. So as I got older, I took early childhood classes in high school. I worked at a daycare, my first job. So I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. There was a small moment in time that I remember my mom was like, "Are you sure it's really hard to get a job as a teacher? Like maybe you can find," I was like, "No, this is what I want to do." So I always knew, and here I am.
Wow, I love that. And speaking about the climate of it's hard to be a teacher now. What does that market look like? Right now in this space, it's difficult to be a teacher, but is it true that there are a lot of current open positions right now? I mean, I know you can't speak for, cities and districts nationwide, but it seems to be that in general, more and more teaching spots are opening up. Is that correct? This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store.
I would say so. I mean, I'll scroll on my Instagram or my TikTok and hear all about these teachers that are leaving, and I never saw that before. It was so hard for me to get a job. I subbed in the district I'm working in now for 2 years before I got hired. And I don't think that's happening now. I think it's a lot easier in certain areas to get a job, but a lot of more people are leaving than they were before. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. I kind of want to shift things real quick here and talk about, as a teacher, is there some advice that you would give to all the busy parents out there? What are some of the things that you would highly recommend parents do for their children when it comes to school, when their children come from home? Is there some advice like, hey, at the minimum, whether it's make sure they get their homework done, or hey, make sure to just check on your mental health of your kids? What is that? What advice would you give in general to families out there?
So I would say two big things. are, making sure that you're reading with your child every night. I think every teacher will say that you are exposing them to books and reading with them, giving them time to read, because that is really like the core of everything that we do. And you want to build a strong foundation and really help them to love reading. That's more like the academic side, I would say. And the other side of it, allow them to problem solve. So many of these kids, we spend a lot of time teaching our students how to problem solve and, have dealing with drama with friends or social emotional, like, dealing with their emotions, and just kind of like allowing them to figure things out and helping them to problem solve instead of stepping in and doing everything for them, I think would be like a really, that's really important to start doing at a young age, is letting them problem solve and figure those things out on their own.
I absolutely love those two pieces of advice. In fact, one of the first advice you gave was read to your child. I keep hearing that over and over again, whether it's from a reading literacy expert, whether it's from a renowned conscious parenting coach. And it's crazy because I don't know if the everyday parent out there knows that how important, fundamentally important it is to read to your kids. I mean, that is, you are helping them develop their skills in so many different ways. But more importantly, I have to say, I love your answer with helping stop solving all the problems for your children. In fact, how it's kind of bizarre because my wife is currently pregnant right now, and before getting the opportunity to speak with industry experts and teachers and parenting coaches, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm going to, I'm there. I'm going to make sure my child has no problems. I'm going to, make sure that they have a fantastic life, or what are the cases? And it turns out that is horrible. Turns out that is absolutely horrible, because I am not allowing my child to problem solve, and I won't be there forever, right? And so I think it's actually a very, very important tip and a piece of advice that you provided, is stop stepping in all the time. You actually need to allow your children to think how to problem solve, because at the end of the day, in the real world, all you have to do day in and day out is problem solve. So if you already have these solutions for them, and step in and provide these solutions, you're actually setting your kids up for future failure. That's something I didn't realize. That's something I literally didn't realize.
I didn't. I mean, I'm not a parent yet, and I wouldn't have known that a couple of years ago until I really got in here. And but it's so true. I mean, they'll come up. I'll have students come up and my pencil broke, and what do I do? I'm like, well, what can you do about it? They're so. A lot of them are so used to having their problems just solved for them or fixed right there and then. And I've learned that when I become a parent, that's going to be really important too. Yeah, of course we want we wouldn't want our kids to be in any kind of situation where, they can't figure it out on their own. But those are the moments where that they're going to grow the most, when they figure out the problems on their own, or when they can problem solve. So that's really one of my biggest pieces of advice.
No, I absolutely love that advice. I want to move on quickly to your social media now. When I browse your profile, it's filled with beautiful pictures of supplies, pictures, arts, and crafts. Now, my question to you is, how much money are you typically spend? Well, number one, are you spending money out of pocket as a teacher when it comes to the classroom? And if so, do you have a rough estimate of how much you usually spend in a given school year?
Yes, I think any teacher would say they spend their own money. There is definitely a range. I like to say that I'm a little bit extra. So some of the things in my classroom, yeah, maybe aren't totally necessary, but a lot of things are. When I got hired, I spent thousands of dollars that summer because I had to buy stools for my small group table. I had to buy my chair at my desk. I had to buy all of the, drawers and storage and books. I mean, we were given books, but not nearly enough for my classroom library. I had to do a fundraiser to get a rug for my classroom. So, I mean, if you look in my class, I actually posted a video about this of video of my classroom when I first got it to where it is now, 80% of the things in here I bought myself. And I've spent thousands and continue to spend a lot every year. I mean, not as much as I did my first year, but hundreds of dollars a year on things in my classroom that I'm not supplied with. I think this year we might have gotten like $150 to order stuff on a specific website, which is just not nearly enough. So every teacher that I know spends their own money, and it's just, we've kind of, I guess accepted the fact that it's like that. It shouldn't be that way, but we don't really have a choice.
Yeah,
So
that is insane. That's an insane narrative that we are at today. I mean, well, not today. Teachers have always spent money out of their pockets. This has been going on for years and years and years. And in fact, today I have not met one teacher who has not spent anything out of their own personal pockets. But I think there needs to be change. I mean, it's a complex problem, right? But this is unfair. We can sit here and talk about all of the issues with currently being a teacher. One of the top things is teacher pay. Okay, so first of all, teachers are not even getting compensated for the education that they have to go through, and these are teachers who also have to spend money out of their own pocket to supply their own classroom. It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
right. And like, I'm lucky enough to work in a district and have parents support that. My students' parents are amazing, that if I need something and I say, hey, I'm running low on dry erase markers, they sent in a ton of them, right? But not everybody has that, and I can't do that for everything. But yeah, if I need tissues in my classroom, I don't have somewhere to go in my school to get a box of tissues. Like I have to reach out to the parents who are great. My parents are amazing, or I have to buy them because we don't have that,
Yeah.
So
now I want to go ahead and talk about state testing. Now, test anxiety is real. In fact, it's estimated that 35% of all students have moderate, high, or severe test anxiety. So I'd love to ask you as a teacher, can you share some advice and strategies that you implement in the classroom to help students navigate test anxiety?
Sure. So we actually just took our state test last week. And my students are in third grade. So this is the first year that they're taking the state test in New York. They had it last week and we're taking it next week. And I've always really made sure that my students know that this test does not define them at all. So I try not to put a lot of stress on the test. We spent a lot of time preparing for it, but at the end of the day, I make sure that they know that this test is just a chance for them to show what they know and give their best effort. And I don't expect any of them to be perfect. So I think, that saying you're more than a test, like you're more than a test score. I feel like I really try to bring that into my room. And I've done things around the test to kind of make it, to ease their anxiety. I had sent home blank letter templates to their families secretly in an envelope, and I had their families write a letter of encouragement and motivation for their child to read the morning of the test. So they sent them back in, and the morning of the test, they had on their desk like a surprise letter from their family, which was really nice. It was just very encouraging for them to kind of like ease their nerves. And then my students that, might not have gotten a letter back, I wrote a letter for them. So that was helpful. I try to make it as fun as a test can be. I had a big surprise box that was, this box is for any student that shows their best effort on the test. And they had all, like surprises for them in there. So I just try to not put a lot of stress on them by, reminding them that this is just one single thing. It doesn't define who they are. And I have to say, I think that has helped my students because, they were nervous and about it, but they didn't, make it the center of everything, and as it shouldn't be. These tests are just a small portion of what they truly are. So
I 100% agree with that. Now, a quick question for you over here. Do you find that there's a slightly more added pressure for third grade teachers, given the fact that this group of students, third grade students, the third grade is the first grade where they take the actual state exam. So I'm just a curious question over here because maybe a fifth grade teacher, well, the students are kind of used to, well, I wouldn't say used to it, but they know the deal. It's a state of end of year exam.
Right.
They've taken it third grade, fourth grade. They know their previous year's grade. Is there some kind of like added pressure or maybe unconscious, like pressure that you do? I'm just curious about that.
I would say a little bit because they don't, we have to teach them how to even fill in like a bubble sheet. They don't even know how to fill in a
Right,
bubble sheet in third
right.
grade. I mean, everything is new to them. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily feel more pressure than like a fourth or fifth. I think we all feel a lot of pressure
Hmm.
around it, which we shouldn't either. But I do think third
Right.
grade is a little more, we do have to show them everything about even writing your name, where to write their name on the test. They've never done this before. So yeah,
Yeah.
there is a lot more. We do a whole like tips for taking a test,
Mm,
week of like just what is it like. So I do
right.
think that third grade is a little more there's a little bit more to touch on there.
Hmm. Now, I want to touch briefly upon social emotional learning. Now, the SEL sector has grown dramatically in a very short period of time. In fact, from November 2019 to April 2021, SEL spending grew by 45% to $765 million. And that number is way up now because we're in 2023 now. So, first of all, can you explain briefly why SEL is important?
Sure. So, their social emotional learning affects every part of who they are at school, their friendships, their attitude toward their schooling, and we really have put such a big emphasis on making sure that those needs are that we focus a lot on social emotional learning because it's really the core of everything.
Mm,
And we want to build strong relationships with our students. We want them to feel confident and successful, and that all starts with having a strong sense of their emotions and being able to problem solve and things like that.
yeah. Are there things that parents can do at home to work on the social emotional learning aspect?
Yeah, I mean, going back to what I said before, problem solving, allowing your student to problem solve, but
Mm,
also talking with your child about their feelings, about their emotions, asking them questions, just being involved in um, their emotional side. And I would say also to model the behaviors that you want to see, model how
mm,
just modeling how to cope with different situations and being a good example for them is really important. We do in my school something called the Positivity Project. So every week we focus on a different character strength, whether it's perseverance or teamwork or kindness, and we spend the beginning of our day, our morning meeting is focused around that character strength to help build that strength and allow them to see like what does it look like, what does it mean to have perseverance, or what does it mean to have purpose, and giving them a
mm.
chance to kind of talk about those things is really important to start our day off. um, and I also do in the morning um, daily affirmations. So every morning we
Okay.
pick 3 daily affirmations and we'll say them together as a class. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't really know if this is like resonating with them, if they're really understanding like
Hmm.
why we say this. But I remember one time one of my students was doing a math problem that was really hard for her, and she just said, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And that was one of our daily affirmations. And it just like warmed
Yeah,
my heart because it's like I can see it carrying over, and
I love
I know
that.
that there's a that they get something out of it. So yeah, just being, just communicating, asking your child questions, talking to them about their feelings, setting a good example, um,
I love that.
yeah.
Nicole, I have just two last questions for you. The first question that I have is, do you have any advice for first year teachers, right? Let's so first year teachers are coming on board. Any kind of tips or advice that they should probably listen to?
I think for me, I am somewhat of a perfectionist in that my first year I put a lot of stress on myself, and I think a lot of teachers or anybody that's starting a job puts a lot of stress on themselves. And I would stress about making the perfect lesson or the perfect plan.
Mm,
And I've learned that, it's things are not always going to be perfect. And really, at the end of the day, what matters is that if you care about your students and you want what's best for them, then it doesn't matter if your lesson is the most extravagant thing, you know. I think that creating a classroom environment and creating strong relationships is the number one priority when you start. Is,
mm,
you're always going to have papers to grade. You're always going to have a to-do list. You're never going
right.
to feel like you're done with the job. But the most fulfilling part is having those strong relationships with students. So I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, you don't have to stress about getting all of this done and making everything perfect. Like, your
Right.
students see you for who you are and they appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, take care of yourself. Like, your mental health is really important. And, we need some time. It's very easy for this job to take over your whole life. It really is.
Mm,
I spent so much time on the weekends my first year
yeah.
doing so much stuff for work. And yeah, we do have to do stuff outside of contract hours, but I would say, keep a good balance, keep a good work life balance, because you don't want to, you know, lose yourself in it either.
No, I love that advice. Nicole, I want to ask you one last question, which is who has been the most strongest or most inspiring person in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
I would say my mom. She is the strongest person I know. She is one of those people that really just faces any challenge head on. She was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a type of blood cancer, back in
Mm,
2011. And since then, I've just watched her, take on any challenge and not let it get to her. And I've learned so many lessons from her through that. I'm somebody that, like, I let things affect me so much and she doesn't.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've learned, just from her, how to be strong and how to push through and how to see the positivity and see the bright side of things all of the time. So she's really been, you know, the most inspiring person to me my whole life, but even
yeah.
more so in the past.
Wow.
So
I mean, that stories are the personal stories are the most important in my opinion. So,
yeah,
Nicole, thank you for sharing that glimpse and insight into your personal life, and the person that means the most to you, or one of the individuals that that mean the most to you. It's the question that I love to end the interview with, because we're talking about education or profession, but what connects us all as humans is the stories that we tell, and everyone can relate to the stories. So thank you so much for sharing that. But also, more importantly, since we're talking about education, since you are a teacher, I should say thank you for being a teacher, right? It is, I think it's often underappreciated. uh, you know we do a lot of things in the education field, but I think teachers have such a fundamental and critical role that they play in society. I talk about this often in my podcast, that my ninth grade teacher changed my life. It was a teacher that changed my life. I grew up in poverty. I didn't have anything. I was hopeless, literally. And it was a teacher that changed my life. And we've had incredible guests on the show. And I always ask the same question I just asked you. Some people say their mom, some people say their dad, some people say other people. But there are a handful of people that always say, hey, it was my 10th grade US history teacher. It was my third grade science teacher. It was whatever it was. Many answers actually are a teacher. It just shows you how important of a role that you play. I mean, you are changing lives. So I always want to, end that and emphasize that when I can, because I think it's, again, underappreciated and not thought about often. But when you dig in and you take a look, aside from the mom and dad answers, it's teachers. It's teachers
yeah,
that play a critical role in shaping the future of a child. even of a single child, that's all. You've done your job, right? If 10 years from, if well, you're teaching third grade, so let's say 20, 25 years from now, a single student comes back to you, Nicole, and tells you that you've changed their life from X, Y, and Z, and they've done this. I think you can be satisfied with life. Like, that's it. You've accomplished it.
And I
Well,
think,
that's my goal. So
yeah, and I think that's what keeps a lot of the teachers going. I know that that's what, I that's my hope. My biggest hope is that I can be, a small part or a big part of their life, and that they go on and remember being in my classroom, because they might not, remember the math that I taught them, but I do want them to
right.
remember how I made them feel or how they felt in my class, and, hopefully be a fundamental part of their life and, their childhood. So I think that's what pushes a lot of us and keeps a lot of us going.
Yeah, well, Nicole, thank you so much for your time. And by the way, for those listening, it is past Nicole's contracted hours, so she's been very gracious enough to spend some time with us. So, Nicole, I certainly won't take up any more of your time. Nicole, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.